In this video, I'm going to write some very simple JavaScript, put it in an HTML page. So I'm going to be doing this in Visual Studio Code. I am going to write this in, it opened my Visual Studio Code. I had previously opened a folder that I was calling JavaScript. And so if you don't have a folder open, you can use file, open a folder. And I'm going to, in that folder, open a new file. I'll just call it simple.html. I am going to use the Emmet abbreviation. So I'm going to say exclamation point, enter, and I'm going to write something that I'll just again call it simple in the title, and then I'll have a header to use an h1 tag in the body that says simple JavaScript demo. I'm going to have a button, and then that button, when it's clicked, is going to do something on the page, and that is going to involve some code. Okay. So under this header, this h1 tag, I'm going to have two buttons. Each button is going to be fairly similar, but there are two ways to do buttons. There's an input, which is of the button type, and then there's a button tag. So first I'm going to make an input, make it of the type equal to button, and give it a I don't want to say the value. And when we're dealing with a button, the value is what the button says. So I'm just going to make this the first one. So it's going to say first. And there is one button. And I'm going to, for now, have a break. So HTML will try to put everything on one line. Depends. Some things want to be on a line by themselves, but two buttons would want to be on the same line unless we explicitly make the line break, and that's what this BR tag does. So this, we talked previously about this. I don't need my Explorer open, so I'm going to close my Explorer. Let me save what I've got. We've talked about this structure previously, and some tags have open and close, and then they have some content between them, whereas this input of the button type is what we call a singleton. There's just this one, and the break tag is similar. And then the second way to make a button is a button tag, and it's got an open and a close, and then what the button says is between the open and close button. So this is just two different ways of making a button. So I'm saving it. If you recall previously, I have the ESLint extension and the live server extension. So this LSLint makes Visual Studio Code understand JavaScript, and the live server allows me to run the code as if it were from a server. So I'm opening with the live server. And again, that's one of the reasons for opening a folder. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Here is my, so here's what we have so far. Two buttons, first and second. Okay, no JavaScript just yet. I'm going to put Next, I'm going to have the button write something on the page, and I need to make a container for the page. I'm going to, at this stage, make it a span. And so a span, another container, another standard container is a div. A div will want to be on a line by itself, so it would not be on the same line as the button. And a span will be on the same line as the button. So I'll just put some dashes in there for now. And save it. And it's being up. It's the live server, so without refreshing, it's updated. So there is now the button and with the input of the type button and the span and the button and is a button and its span. Okay. Now let's start giving some things some ID. So if we're going to refer to something in code, we need to give it an ID. The button is going to do something, but I don't, at this stage, I'm not going to refer to it, but I'm going to refer to this span because I want to change that dash, dash, dash to something. So I'm going to give it an ID. So I give it the attribute ID equals, I tend to give a little prefix that says what kind of thing it is. So it's a span. So I'm going to say SP, and I'll say here first. And then down here for this one, I'm going to say ID equals SP second. It might have been easier to just say SP1 and SP2, but okay, that won't change anything the way things look because it's just an ID, but it's going to help us in the functioning, because I need to not just say button, the first button is going to do something to the first span, the second button is going to do something to the second span. I need to distinguish them. That's the purpose of the ID. Okay, now I need to say, what do I do to the button to cause this change that I want? And so there are different ways to do this. First of all, there are different events. I can mouse over the button. I can usually what we do with a button is click it. So that's what I'm going to work with. But there are other events. So this is event-driven programming. So we have to specify the event and then what we want the event to do. And there are different ways to get this connection between the element, the button, and what the user does, the clicking, and the function, the code that we want to run when it's done. But I'm going to do it sort of an old-fashioned and simple way and just say onclick equals, and then I will give the name of a function then which I must supply. So I'll call it the first function. Okay, and then I will similarly for this other button down below, I will give it an onclick and say second function. Okay, so when I click that first button, it will call something called first function, which I'm responsible then for defining, and I have not yet defined. And same thing for the second button. Okay, so now I have to write some code. The code will go in I'm sort of switching languages here. I have so far been writing in HTML, but my code is going to be in JavaScript. And so I will specify a region on the page with a script tag, and then between the script tags, so it will be an open script tag, a closed script tag, and in between I will put JavaScript. And then there are different places. I can put in any number of places I can put this JavaScript. So one of the reasons for two buttons is I'll show you two different, I'm showing you a button of the input type and of the button type, but I'm also going to show you different places where you can write code. So one of the places I'll write some code is up here in the head. So I will make a script tag, an open and close script tag. And I will also put one in the body. Okay. So now I want to right click and format the document. And that was helping me with, again, my indenting, making it all line up nicely. And I'm going to put up here in script the definition of my first function. So I use the keyword function to announce that I am defining a function. Then I say first function, open close parenthesis, open close curly bracket. So it's got to match exactly, including the case, because JavaScript is case sensitive. So I called it capital F first and capital F function. So I have to repeat that. That's just my name. So this could have been anything so long as it matches. The keyword function has to be spelled correctly. That's a word defined by JavaScript. So I don't make that up. I have to have that exactly as is. This, I can have whatever I want so long as I match myself, and I have. So I want to change the span with the ID of SP first, and I want to make it say something new. So I do that by saying document with a small d. That refers to the overall page. I'm going to get an element based on its ID. So get element by ID, and it's helping me. That's what that lint did by telling me that get element by ID has a small g, a capital E, a capital B, a capital I. Those things are all important. So it's, when it's offering you that kind of help, you should take it. The ID that I gave this was SP first. And that is an exact matching kind of a thing. So often I will sort of go to one place, copy it and paste it from there. I think I'm being careful enough, but often I will copy and paste to be sure. So that gets the span. That's the whole span. And there are various parts of the span. There's the open tag, the close tag, there's the in between. And I don't want to change its ID, or I don't want to change its styling. I just want to change what's in between. That's known as the inner HTML or inner text. So I'm going to say inner HTML. And that is like bigger stuff. So I could have full-blown HTML and make it have other tags within tags. I'm not going to have tags within tags, but I'm just explaining the difference between inner HTML and inner text. But I will go with inner HTML, so I could do more if I wanted to. And I'm doing what we call an assignment statement. I am saying that I want what's the inner HTML to be something new, and I'm just going to say something silly. I'm going to say one potato. So let me save that. Come over here, and I hit now the first button, and it changes the span to say now one potato. I didn't do anything for the second button. And if I hit the first button again, I'm writing one potato, but it already says one potato, so you don't see any change. Okay. So now let's go down to this script down here. And similarly, I'm going to define a function. This time, the name of the function is second function. And again, I could copy and paste it to make sure it's spelled exactly right. And that's the other thing I have to make sure I get right is after the name of the function, open and close parenthesis. Later, more complicated functions, you can put what's called an argument in the function. You can send the function some information so that it can do something slightly different each time. This function always says the same thing. So its list of arguments is empty. It's not going to have any arguments. And then after the parentheses, you have curly brackets, and that defines what we call a code block, all of the things that go within the function. I'm going to do something similar. Document that get element by ID This time it's SP second. And I'm going to change its innerHTML to, of course, to potato. So now, and I don't have to, JavaScript's very forgiving, but I can have a semicolon to mark the end of the line. So I'll put that in. What else will I do? I will right click and format the document to line up some nice indenting for myself and save. And now my little simple, there's one potato, there's two potato. What might I want to do just to make a little bit more out of this? I don't want you to press the second button first. You can right now, but I want to control that. So I'm going to come back up here to button 2. And I am going to say that it is disabled. Put that in quotes. Disabled equals disabled. Let me show you what that does. So now the second button is grayed out and I can't click it. So I can click the first one, but I'd like to be able to click the first one after I click the second one. So I have to change its enable status, or disabled status. Okay. If I want to change in code the second button, then anything I want to change in code, I must give an ID. So I'm going to give the second button an ID of button second, btn second. I don't want the E to be capital. Okay. So now I'm going to add more code to the first function. So I want to make another change to the document. I want to change a different element this time. I want to change button second. And what property of it do I want to change? I want to change its disabled property. And I don't want it to be disabled. So I'm going to say false. I want its disabled property to be set equal to false. And so then it will become not disabled, or as I will say, enabled. Let's see it. So here we are. Right now, I'm just starting. The second button is disabled. I click the first button, and then the second button becomes enabled. Let's take it one more step. Let's give the first button an ID. And let's then disable the first button. So I said you could click that button twice and it doesn't do anything. So let's stop them from clicking it twice. And this will be disabled, if I could spell it correctly, disabled. See, it's offering me help and I should take it. It's true. So when we click the first button, the second button is disabled. The first button is the only enabled button. When I click that button, I'm changing this spans innerHTML to one potato. I'm making the disabled property of the second button false so that the person can, and I still have disabled spelled incorrectly. There we go. The second button becomes disabled property becomes false, so it becomes enabled, and the first button becomes disabled property is true, so you cannot click it. Then if you click the second button, I will disable the second button. First one is already disabled, but I will disable okay. So let's see what our exciting program does now. So first button, I click it, it changed one potato, changed the inner HTML of the span to one potato. It disabled the first button, it enabled the second button. When I click the second button, which I can do now, it says the span changes to two potato and the second button is still enabled. So I must have something wrong there. I have disabled spelled quite badly. Disabled. There we go. Spelling is important. And this time now it disables. So there we go. That's what I wanted to show you. Two ways to make button: an input of the type button or an open close button, two different styles of button. Each button I gave an ID, I gave an on click. The on click connects it to the click action to a function. I must define those functions. I showed you the function goes in a script tag. It's possible for me to put the script tag in the head. It's possible for me to put the script tag in the body. There can be differences occasionally that show up between those two locations, but not in such a simple program as this. The code is put not only inside the script tag, but since it is what we call event-driven programming, the code doesn't run until the user does something. And so the clicking calls a function and then the function executes some code. So all of our code is not only inside a script tag, but it's also inside a function. I use the keyword function. You see it there in blue, then the name of the function. It has to match exactly. Open, close parenthesis. We would put arguments in there, except in this case, there are none. And then curly brackets. In the curly brackets is the block of code executed when you click the first button, changing the inner HTML of a span, enabling one button, disabling the other one, and then similarly the second function, changing the inner HTML of the second span and disabling the second button. There's nothing more to do in the script. That's what I wanted to show you here. Fairly simple function. Thanks for your attention.